Okay, I think we'll get started, and the participants who haven't joined yet can join us as we go. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, where we'll be discussing the startup journeys of two successful entrepreneurs in the Asian market. My name is Hugh Darwell, and I'm with Acclaim, and I'm based in Phnom Penh in Cambodia. I'll be the moderator of the webinar today. So we have two of our clients, Harshit Lunani, the founder of Kuala in Indonesia, and Jeremiah Su, the founder of the CVP Group in Singapore. And they'll share with us their unique experiences in starting and growing their business to where they are today, the challenges they face, the successes and the failures as they grew their business. We'll then have time for questions, so please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to send in your questions for our guests. So first I'll introduce our two guests, a bit of background. Harshit is the founder and CEO of Kuala, the fast-growing Southeast Asian multi-channel insurtech company that aims to revolutionise insurance through a combination of underwriting risk for high-frequency events in daily lives and photo-based claims assisted by machine learning. In his role as CEO, Harshit sets the vision for the company and leads the strategy to help the team consistently achieve major goals, whilst always having an eye on product improvements to make customers happy. This is critical to Kuala's mission to humanise insurance and provide better access to insurance for all members of society. Before successfully building Kuala, Harshit founded and ran Bima Mobile's Indonesian setup as part of their first foray into Southeast Asia. Prior to this, he worked at the Boston Consulting Group and Merrill Lynch. Harshit graduated from the University of Oxford with a master's degree in mathematics and computers. Our second guest is Jeremiah Su, who graduated from MediaCorp's on-air promotions for Channel 5 in 2010. Since then, he's been involved in all facets of video production, from being an assistant to shooting, editing, producing and directing. In 2014, he founded the CVP Group, a content creation firm with a broad range of clients across Australia. His role at the company is now Chief Cheerleader, and he is now running teams in Singapore, Hong Kong and Tokyo. In his free time, Jeremiah teaches content marketing and video production and loves all things video except for selfies, as he insists he's quite shy. His team services clients like Circles.life, Deliveroo, Lazada, CBRE and Siemens, just to name drop a few of them. So there are two guests today, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion about their startup journeys. First, we thought we'd get each of them to give a brief overview of their companies. And so Harshit, could you go first, please?
Thanks, Hugh. Thank you. Pleasure being here. Thanks everyone for joining as well. So yeah, I mean, just a little bit about Kuala. I think he was very kind to introduce me already. Kuala is about a 2.5-year-old startup now. We started in Indonesia, but now we're in 3 markets: Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam. I think, like you mentioned, we're a multi-channel insurtech, and that means quite uniquely, we're not big believers in pure online. We actually believe in digital, and there's a subtle difference there. We believe that insurance, being such a complex area but a very important need for society, often needs more understanding than is typical of an online purchase, such as shopping or for typical items, or buying flight tickets and so on. And hence we believe that human assistance is still a big part of buying insurance, but that human assistance can be digitized and the entire process can be controlled digitally, so that there's a much faster engagement and overall overall evolution of the market, without actually meaning that it has to go purely online. There's a subtle difference, but that's something we're big believers in, and globally we believe this also remains the trend. In Indonesia itself, if you notice Southeast Asian markets, many of them are still emerging in insurance, and there's a huge portion of society who's still underserved. And so when we started the business, our goal was to increase the size of the sort of potential market where people could get access to more insurance. And to do this, we launched several new products with likes which could impact you in your day-to-day lives, and really top-of-mind use cases such as breaking your phone, or getting late to the movies, or having a flight delayed, or not wanting to go on a trip which you already booked, but then your boss wouldn't let you go, and so on, right? These are very top of mind for most people, and most people have experienced them in their lifetime. And so we felt that that's a great way to initiate people to insurance, get them to really begin to see the value proposition of insurance. And then along the way, as they get more matured with understanding the insurance proposition, we then bring them into a journey where they can be advised by us as to like what products are relevant for their long-term life, for their own families and for themselves, right? And to do this, we have two business models. One is a partnership model, and that's where a lot of our new age insurance, such as like being late for a movie or just wanting to cancel your flight, come in. And we partner with leading platforms today, such as Tokopedia, Grab, Traveloka, JD, and so on. And our products are are distributed through them, but very deeply embedded in their journeys, so that it's not about going there to buy insurance; it's about going there to do your usual behavior. But there's some elements of risk when you're making these purchases, and those can be mitigated by our products. But but of course, like I said, the second business model is as these customers mature and they want a solution which is more geared towards themselves and their long-term goals and aspirations. That's when we have an advisory platform, where our advisory platform allows you to speak with advisors and get the best kind of benefits that work for you, right? But again, here our hypothesis of like who is an advisor is fast changing. In the past, an advisor needed to be someone who had a high amount of technical knowledge, and then therefore could guide you and had a lot of things in the memory of like what is available. But I think as the world is evolving, this notion of having to have this in your mind is changing. And just like how Grab has changed the way taxis are looked at, right? And if you had 20,000 taxis in your country, you now have 1 million, and that's a big change into how people can get access to transportation and who can provide transportation, right? That's changed. And similarly, we believe that now with our tools, the notion of who can be an advisor has changed, and now an ordinary person can become an advisor through our platform and help service those friends and family who they believe they can support, and also see it as a small revenue income, right? But on the other hand, people have more choice through our platform as well, and they get the guidance they need. And that's why we believe this can lead to a revolutionary step forward in the kind of access and safety net that you have in terms of how to get insurance. Yeah, so that's what we're up to now. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Harshit. And we'll get a little bit deeper into your how you got to where you are a little bit later. So Jeremiah, perhaps you could give us a bit of an outline of your business. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hugh. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremiah. I'm glad to be part of this webinar. So actually, Hugh did a very, very good introduction of myself and my company. So I have no idea what else to add. I guess, okay, if I could talk about one thing, in CVP Group, right? We make content pure and simple. That's about it, in the form of videos, photos, and animations. I would say that the exciting thing right now for CVP Group is that we are based in Singapore. We have offices in Tokyo and also Hong Kong. But next year itself, we're actually going to be opening up a Shanghai office. So that's like, yay, some exciting times. I'm going to give myself an emote. Oh, I can't give myself a reaction. Oh, well, I guess all you participants, you can, give me a virtual thumbs up. But yeah, man, in essence, that is what my team and I are all about. Creating content and making the process and the outputs and the deliverables pure and simple. Back to you.
Great, thanks, Jeremiah. So sort of looking back at how you've got to where you are. There's obviously a number of things that you've gone through in the journey. And the first thing I think it would be good to talk about is what was the single biggest challenge that you faced in moving from a small company started by 1 or 2 people to the much larger companies that you are today. Maybe Jeremiah, perhaps you could go first.
Wow. Okay, that's a very big question. The pressure is on me to go first. Harshit, I'll make it easy for you. Okay. Okay. So to answer your question, how specifically, let me clarify, Hugh. So what you're asking is how did we, Harshit and myself, move from a solopreneur to a team of whatever?
It's more like was there one big challenge that you really had to, one hurdle you had to surmount, that you were, you know, you were faced with it and you thought, how am I going to get past this to be able to grow the company?
Okay.
Yeah. Was there one single one, or was there a number of them?
Wow. I think Hashi can agree with me to say that no, it's not one single thing. It's probably a million things. But to actually answer you, Hugh, the one thing that actually bogged me down, because I've been running the company for 6 years. For the first 4 years, I was literally just a solopreneur. I was doing everything by myself. Why? Because I knew my quality, I knew my outputs, and I had control. Okay, so the one thing that stopped me from growing is control. Why? Because I had control of my processes, I have control of my outputs, I have control over myself, and that control was rooted in trust issues. I couldn't trust people to deliver the same kind of content I did, the way I shoot, the way I edit fast, the way I produced quality work for my clients, and the kind of intimacy when doing client comms or client facing activities, trust. And from that trust, where did it stem from? It stemmed from ego. I was young, I was a hunk, and I was full of aspirations, being an egomaniac narcissist. I mean, it is what it is. And because of that, I wasn't able to actually share this power or seemingly this form of control to other people. And then two wise people actually asked me 3 things. Okay, the first thing is, what do you want to achieve, Jeremiah? And I answered, I wanted to build a legacy, And that wise person said, well, legacy is just another word of saying you're an egomaniac. Then I was like, wow, okay, thank you, very nice. But then I went home, I slept on it, and I was like, well, that wise person actually made some sense, legacy. What is a legacy? When people die with their legacy, will the company grow? Will the brand continue? Or will it die with the founder? So that's the first thing. Second thing was, are you on the business or in the business? The first 4 years when I was running my company, I was in the business. I was in the day-to-day operations. I was shooting, I was editing, I was calling clients, I was going for pre-production meetings. And being in the business, I'm a slave to the business. So the question was, are you on the business or in the business? Being on the business means you are people like, Virgin Active, our dear good sir. He is running it, and he's not in the business. He's on the business, managing and supervising whatever happens, or maybe not even supervising, because he has trusted people to actually help him achieve the Virgin dream. Now, the last question, I said 3 questions, right? The last question was basically, are you able to hire people better than you? And that wise person is Jack Ma. The other 2 wise people was actually James Ian and Ethan Lin, and Jack Ma actually said that the way he grew his business was to hire people better than him, because he knew his strengths, he knew his weaknesses, he knew what he was good at and what he sucked at, okay? And the fact that he was able to hire people better than him meant that he gave trust, he gave control, he gave autonomy, empowerment, education, enablement. And from that 4 years running it myself, it enlightened me, And the next 2 years, I grew from 1 person to 3 people to 30 in 3 countries, and I've never looked back since. So that is a very, very long answer to your question, Hugh. And I hope I made it easier for Hashid to continue the question. How about you, Hashid? What was your one thing, that you felt was an issue for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great answer, and you've stolen my words. I need to come up with something else. But I do agree, first of all, that I think delegating and like being able to remove yourself from the equation, as well as hiring better than you, are all important things, because the world's moving, and you can't always be at the top at a personal level when it comes to actually doing the work. I think perhaps if I look back, there's two. I think depending on the stage of the company, there are different things which become the hardest thing you've overcome, and the one thing you'd want, right? So the thing is, I don't know the audience, and I'm not sure where they come from. So I'll give a more general answer on rather than an industry challenge which we face, right? Because we're in a very traditional, very long in old industry, which has been around for a couple of 100 years, right? Insurance, and very regulated. So it comes with an enormous set of challenges on that front, but that may not be relevant to the audience. So I think one thing I would say, there was an experience from my previous startup, was that I didn't think that, and when I was thinking of this startup and I was thinking in my mind, I really want to do this. One thing was stopping me was like doing it alone. And I felt very strongly that I did not ever want to do a startup alone again, because the kind of, it's quite I know sometimes it come across as a sexy or glamorous journey, but it's actually quite a lonely journey. And not having a thought partner can be very, very tough. When there are many, tough days, right? But of course, if you want to have a thought partner and a sort of a partner with you for a long time, you guys really need to be, in sync in some ways, but also different in some ways. And, usually it's much easier to think of someone who's like you as being, we get along. Whereas you really have to challenge yourself to find someone where your values are the same, but probably you think differently. And that will allow you to have a better combination. And I think that's what took me some time. And I mean, obviously, that was a very critical challenge to overcome upfront. Otherwise, I don't think I would have started the company or been anywhere close to coming to where we are today. Yeah.
I think you both make great points. Particularly the two things struck me. Hiring people who are better than yourself is always a great way to expand your company and improve yourself as well. And then having a
Sounds like we have lost Hugh. Well, to the rest of the other participants, Hugh is back. Hugh is back. Okay.
Oh,
we lost you there for a moment, Hugh. The fun things of doing things live.
Sorry. Okay, so I don't know how much you caught of what I said, but I think hiring people better than yourself and having mentors or thought partners very important in your journeys. And so, sort of leading on from the challenges. And Harshit, I'll let you go first this time, so you can. So Jeremiah has to think a bit harder about things. What was the biggest mistake you made? The single biggest mistake you made in getting to where you are?
Again, a tough one, because I think you make mistakes on a very regular basis, to be honest, when you're in doing a startup. And you must, because if you're only getting it right, that means you're leaving a lot on the table, to be honest. Okay. I think a couple of big mistakes. I think I have personality traits, right, where I think which you have to evolve over time and try to improve them, right. Where I think a very critical one is like I think trying to not overthink the problem, thinking more simply, because sometimes you have the tendency to think about the worst that can happen, right, and you really need to think about like where are the areas of real risk and where are the areas of which you can accept, and pick your battles accordingly, right. And that was a very critical part in like I think how we thought about it, and that was a mistake I made a few times very early on, where overthinking a decision and like trying to overanalyze it, whereas like and I came to the conclusion that if it's a decision that you can fix in in a week or two, right, the cost is actually higher to delay the decision, right, and you should just take the decision now. Whereas if it's a decision that's going to live with you for a year or two, then you just probably think about it more, right. But at the time when I started, I used to think of all problems equally, and now I think it's changed because you need to make decisions faster. And so if the cost of it is like, hey, I told you, you have the budget for this, but then and we made a mistake, probably did a bit too much on the budget. Well, I can just change it the next time, right? It's not going to kill the company. But if I hire the wrong person, it has a 2-year impact, right? So I'm going to pay more attention to something like that than this. And that was one of the I think mistakes I made early, which tend to try to think differently about it now.
Okay, great.
Keeping things much more simple.
Yes. Keeping things simple is always a good way to approach things. Jeremiah, how about you?
For myself, I would say that if I could pick, my top 10 mistakes Jeremiah has ever made running company, I would say that it will definitely be accepting help, or in other terms, accepting investment, right? Because like what Harshit said, the startup journey as a founder is very sexy. You know? Right now, everybody is glamorizing the whole startup industry, the whole startup hustle and grind. But it's a super lonely journey. Nick Johnson from EGN, he actually talked about executive loneliness from someone being at the top of the food chain or as a business owner. If you are doing it alone, it's super lonely. And I feel that because of back then, you know, when I was younger, because of my ego, I did not want to accept other inputs from other people. I did not want to learn. You know, I was super headstrong. I was super stubborn. And ever since I have, you know, got rid of my inhibitions, of my ego, and really grow, you know, with help, with investment, I see the benefits of actually going with a group think. Like what Harshit said also just now, you know, you maybe don't find people who are similar to you, but find people who are aligned in your values and objectives, because you might have disagreements, but then you will grow stronger, you know, because iron sharpens iron, right? So one wise person, I keep using quotes by wise people. I'm not picking this out from the internet or anything. This is really my own life story, okay? So this wise person actually told me, would you rather own 100% of your company and earn 10,000 revenue? Or would you rather own 10% of your company and earn 1,000 million? 1,000 million is 1 billion, right, guys? Sorry, I can't math. Okay, would you rather own 10% of a company and have $100 million in revenue? So it really boils down to what you want to achieve. You know, there are people out there. I'm not devaluing people who want to have 100% control of a company. Okay, yeah, it's fine. If your objective is to have creative control, to have corporate control of your own company, of your own entity, that's fine, man. You do you. But for me, because a lot of wise people in my life, they have said that your company, your brand is a vehicle for you to make money, for you to do things you want to do in life. Okay? So when I had a mind shift change and I saw it that way, I was like, yeah, okay. If I became a martyr for my company, and during this COVID season, you know, my company fails, I have to close down, I have to sack all my staff, who am I benefiting? Nobody, you know. But if I had a group, had a partner together running this with me, then we will weather the storm and we will survive, you know. So to answer your question, Hugh, my one mistake for the first 4 years of running CVP Group was not to accept investment, because, you know, my ego was huge.
Well,
no ego, guys.
Leads on to another question, and I think one that's quite important from the point of view of startups who are looking to grow, in that you both have had third-party investment come into your companies. How did that, in each of your cases, how did that come about? Was it you going out to seek the investors, or was it people approaching you who had happened to see your products, who, you know, happened to see what you were offering the market and thought, you know, I'd like to be a part of this? And Harshit, in your case, in the insurance game, is there need for sort of a certain level of capital in the company in order to get necessary licenses and that sort of stuff? So maybe Harshit, you could go first.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think we are in the kind of space where you do need capital quite early. Regardless, though, you obviously have to think about ways by which you can still be capital efficient, even, and that's part of the innovation that you do, right? Whether is there a few levels by which you can do the same thing, but, you know, just go to the less cash, right? That's very much part of the I think the frugality of a startup. But I think we were very fortunate that we were backed very early. So I think our first investment happened when you know, when we were not a company yet. Like so, I mean, someone had offered to, and it was also not. I mean, very fortunate. There was actually 3 venture capital companies, you know, including the largest bank in Indonesia. So the actual company was formed after they had already made the offer. So that was quite fortunate that, you know, there was that much interest. But again, I mean, I wouldn't recommend that to everyone, because I mean, I think oftentimes for many businesses, I think bootstrapping a little bit could be very good in terms of managing dilution and so on. but we are in an industry which is extremely capital heavy. So for us, they're probably, whatever capital we could have put in would probably not have really moved the needle at all as individuals. So we need, investment early, and I was fortunate to get it, right? I think along the way, of course, we've added others, and I think we've been fortunate that we've been joined by the likes of Sequoia Capital and Mass Mutual and Flourish Ventures and so on. And today, the largest telecom in Indonesia, the largest bank in Korea, largest bank in Indonesia, all part of our investor pool. But obviously, dealing with investors as well as I think getting the investment itself is not easy, and it's partly, I think, driven by how you operate, partly by how you the story and the impact you're having, and then of course there's market sentiment as well, right, which comes into play. But definitely you do need to, and one of the advice I got was that sometimes you will make a bad deal in an investment deal, or in life in general, right? It's very important to differentiate from like maybe you made a mistake in the past, and how do you not let that encumber you too much when you make a new decision, because we have a habit of like looking back and I think thinking forward a lot more, because whoever's coming in the future, they were not the one who caused the problem in the past, right? And maybe it was actually my fault, right? So I think that plays a very important role when you're managing investors and so on. And I think definitely, though, I mean, I think at some point maybe investors come to you, but early in the journey, of course, it's on you to go really hustle and create the interest in the market, so that you can create demand for it. And it's no different from any other. If you're selling a product as well, you have to create a demand for it. It's similar. Think of investors as customers, and you need to create demands.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, that's an interesting way that the people came to, or that you had investors to start with. I think that's probably reasonably unique in a startup environment. So, which is a testament to the quality of the product you have, I think. Jeremiah, how about you with investors? You seem to be reluctant to invite them in. Was it people bashing your door down wanting to come in, or what was happening there?
No. Nobody holding pitchforks and wanting to bash into my office. And certainly not as exciting as Hashid's story, man. Oh gosh, now I feel a bit embarrassed, sharing this story. Well, okay, for us, it actually happened in 2018 September. So I engaged an outsourced finance company to do all my bookkeeping and finances because we were growing. I honestly, I wasn't looking for any like pre-seed rounds, series A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z. I was just doing my thing, making videos and making good content. But then when I got the outsourced finance company, they actually saw the work that we did, and they asked if it was okay to shoot for them. And I was like, yeah, sure, man. You pay me, I will shoot anything for you, man. And I happened to catch the eye of back then the director of that company, and he was one of the wise people who actually asked me, Jeremiah, what do you want to achieve? And I told him legacy, and he shot me down, like a cowboy in a Western flick. He was like, pow, pow, ego. And I was like, wow, this is the first time I'm meeting you and you're telling me this? WTF, mate. But I would say that actually happened in April 2018. And then for 6 months, he kept the relationship. He saw the work that we do, the quality and the outputs that we were giving, and he was very impressed with our processes, our lines of communication, and how we actually run productions, which was very, very different from how other people ran it in a legacy and traditional business model industry. So after not say bashing on my door, but knocking lightly on my door for 6 months, that was when I was weathered down. And I was like, you know what? It's time for me to grow, from just 3 people. Let's hear what this guy has to say. And long story short, that company, he was basically the director of, can I even say this? I'm pretty sure I can, right? James. So he was the director of Jifin, and Jifin was recently acquired by Acclaim. So, long story short, I guess Acclaim, you guys are kind of, thank you, for producing this. But yeah, so that is my story. How did I attract investment? Really by keep on keeping on doing good work, like what Harshit said. And for me, I didn't actively look for it, but I'm very blessed. My stars aligned, and Thanos didn't do any clicks, but I happened to stay around and get investment and grow to where I am today. So yeah, man, sounds like a
Great.
fairy
Yeah,
tale.
I mean, clearly, James is a very wise man because he chose to join us here at Acclaim. So
Super wise, man. You can tell.
very
Like,
wise. Very wise. Something that's always at I think the forefront of startups when they, particularly in Singapore and Indonesia, is government assistance, because both countries have. Indonesia has its 1,000 Startups program, and Singapore has Enterprise Singapore. Both provide assistance to startups in their countries, and they have conditions around what you can and can't do, and what they'll give you. Did either of you rely on or look at those programs and decide it was for you or wasn't for you? Harshit, how about you
Sorry. So yeah, of course. I mean, I think it's great programs, and I think I have heard of many cases where companies have benefited from these. I think we ourselves are not, I think, part of it, but I think at the same time, we're fortunate to be venture backed, as I mentioned, and I think there's many companies who need more assistance as well, to be honest. So I think I'm very glad that they were able to help so many of them. Obviously, in a way, it's never enough, but on the other hand, at least something is better than nothing, right? So I'm glad it exists, and I think in particular, my view is that I think the whole COVID lockdown and so on has been toughest for, I would say, young to medium stage startups. I think the really large startups are in kind of like they're on a train and they're just moving, right? And so kind of things are much more set, processes are much more aligned. You know what you're trying to build, and therefore you just keep going. But I think as a younger startup, you're still, I think there are many experiments you're running, and there's still definitely a lot of like things you're trying to constantly learn from and adapt. And I think that's why it's very tricky at times like COVID, and hence I think why the need for more support as well is very important. So I'm glad these things exist. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And Jeremiah, how about you? In Singapore, it's quite a sort of almost like a mini industry, Enterprise Singapore there, helping all sorts of companies get going. Did you look to them at any point?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if the government is giving out free money, take it. Okay, that is my advice to you, free money. But of course, with everything that is kind of free, there is always a caveat. So when I first started out, I actually onboarded on many startup accelerator programs from the Singapore government, like Workforce Singapore. They had a lot of career trials where the government will fund 70 to 80% of new incoming staff. We also had things like flexible work grants. Oh my gosh, I can literally create a Google document of a whole list of grants that I actually tapped onto. And for a startup, right, it is definitely a very, very good boost and support system that the Singapore government has. I'm pretty sure in every country, there will always be support systems for startups. My advice is yes, go for it. Even though you might have to do up a 60-page, proposal to the government to get that claim for 80% because in the long run, it will definitely serve to add to your own agenda in growth and also sustainability, So one of the main things right now that I'm actually still servicing is what we call the SG United Traineeship, where I literally came out with a whole 1-year curriculum for people who want to learn, about the media industry, who wants to go into content creation, who wants to go into media producing and all that stuff. And the government will fund actually 70% of their allowance. So, I mean, that is just one case study of something that I've tapped on. But if you were to onboard yourself on any startup accelerator program, be prepared to really invest the time into doing up the proposals and the time taken research on what you need and what the government will give out. So to answer your question, Hugh, yes, man, I am a firm supporter of all these assistance schemes because why not?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the government. The government has its hand in your pocket on so many occasions. If they're actually handing you something, then it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile taking it, as long as you look at the strings that are attached and you're happy with.
Yeah,
the
especially the fine print. You never know when you're gonna be selling your soul to the government.
Exactly. And actually, one question that's come in through the audience is, what about crowdfunding to finance startups? I mean, both of you clearly haven't relied on that, but what's your view? What's your view on that sort of means of raising finance?
I think it's interesting, if I don't mind taking this first, crowdfunding, right? In recent times, crowdsourcing, it's something that is more like, decentralizing all this money and then sharing it and sharing the wealth and all that. I feel there's always pros and cons of any scheme, okay? Crowdfunding, just like things like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, if it goes well, it goes well. If it goes sour, it will really affect your brand, it will affect your reputation, and ultimately it might be your demise. Now, I actually thought about doing a crowdsource or crowdfunding campaign for CVP 3 years ago, but I did not embark on that because I felt that if I were to do crowdfunding, right, there will be too many voices and it will affect the direction and the brand persona and eventually the future casting of CVP Group. I mean, the saying goes, too many cooks spoil the broth, right? So if you have too many people trying to chop off chicken and chicken breast and all that, you will get a finger eventually. Okay, so what about you, Hashid? What do you think about crowdfunding, though?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not very experienced at crowdfunding, having not been through it, but I'm aware of obviously that it happens quite a bit. I think, look, everyone has to do what they can for their business, and if it's a viable option and you don't have other options, sure. I don't think it will be my first option. I think institutional investors or I think influential / experienced angels are probably still a better bet for the long-term sustainability. But if you're willing to gamble a little bit and you don't have that much to lose, I would take that shot, right? I think the danger can always be about how you structure such a deal, because crowdfunding means that you have so many micro investors. Managing that can be quite challenging. I mean, and again, so therefore having a very strong way to legally manage that is very important if you do that. But again, at the end of the day, I think there's absolutely no shame in it, and I think it's perfectly fine to take money from there. But definitely explore whether. I think one of the ways I would advise for crowdfunding, if you have a strong backer who's like a private, venture capital or someone who's willing to take a reasonable share, and then you combine that with crowdfunding, I think you probably do a bit better than a pure crowdfunding, because there'll be an anchor, and therefore you can set a certain kind of price and certain kind of expectation and drive some interest as well, right? Because you have credibility. And to some extent, going in without that, the risk increases significantly. So that would be the only thing I would suggest. Yeah, but I think a perfectly viable option otherwise.
I actually like what Hashid said about micro investors. One of the reasons why I actually opened myself up for investment is not because of the money. Money is momentarily, it's temporary. There is no longevity in that. Okay, but with investment, you will actually get what I call mentorship and a clear directive, or at least somebody who can help you grow your business. Because with crowdfunding, all you're doing is just going to a wet market and then lay long, invest in my company. You don't get any mentorship. But if you, like what Hashid and I have done, if we go to institutions, if we go to private or even VCs, right, what we get is more than just money. We actually get a network. We actually get mentorship. We actually get opened up to a whole new world of business restructuring and organization that I feel crowdfunding won't provide, there is no longevity in that. But like what Harshit said, man, I mean, if it works for you, it works for you. It really boils down to your purpose of intent and what your objectives are. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And a related question that's come in the Harshit mentioned venture capital, or you both mentioned venture capital. In terms of getting in venture capital and their sort of requirements once they're in there to understand what's going on in the business, how difficult was it to sort of put together a pitch deck or the financials that they would require and then produce the financials that they need on a regular basis? To sort of to make sure that they're satisfied with how their investment is tracking.
I think Harshit will be a better person to answer this, because my pre-seed round was really just from an angel, so I haven't gone to that level of VCs but yeah, Harshit.
Sure, happy to take that one. Look, I mean, I've been a consultant in the past, and consultants make a lot of slides, so I made a lot. And I'll also be honest, I absolutely hate it. Right, but if you want to go to VCs, I think, unfortunately or fortunately, you've got to get in line. This is a necessity. Okay, it's very important to be able to clearly communicate your proposition to them. And you may think it's a waste of time to make nice slides and all that, but they're taking a lot of risk, right? So you need to de-level that risk. You need to lower that risk. And this is a strong way of doing it, right? Both from a presentation as well as business, having a good business model. But equally, it's also about the storytelling, about like, what is the impact? And they need to see the passion. They need to see of course, any areas of brilliance. And of course, they need to see that what is your first principles understanding of this, right? And that's very critical to bring out through a presentation. The presentation is not like walking them through a bunch of slides to like say I do ABC. It's about bringing it together into a coherent story. And so, yes, as a founder, this is a very important part of what you must do. Whether you outsource the actual making of the slides, but the storyline absolutely must come from you, right? And again, in the early days, you probably have to make the slides as well, right? I mean, maybe as you get bigger, you might be able to find a way to like outsource that particular like making of the slide itself. But you have to have a lot of input into it, right? The business model, you really have to justify. Yeah, but I cannot overemphasize this. A good pitch deck, I think and I know of areas where a good pitch deck can get you double the money.
Yep.
Sorry,
okay.
Hugh, to hijack. For my sake, I'm actually also super curious. So if, Harshit, for yourself, right, do you feel that having a good pitch deck is good, or finding that gut feel when you meet a VC or even a family office? Because angels is usually individuals, right? But a VC is kind of like either individual representing an organization. Would you feel that you focus more on a good pitch deck, or would you say that it is more important to build somewhat rapport with the VC? Because I mean, VCs, if let's say they are very well known, but then you guys aren't aligned in your objectives and what you want to achieve, he might give you the money, but then in the long run, it might become a very toxic relationship. Yeah. Maybe you can share your experience with that, because I would love to learn, man.
No, so I think the rapport is absolutely critical, but I think it comes a little bit later, because rapport or a gut feeling thing is a bet. Like, you don't know before you meet someone what's going to happen, right? So the deck must stand on its own feet, right? No one is going to invest in you from VC, especially as you get bigger, just because you're a good drinking buddy, right? I mean, that's not going to happen. That's business, right? So the pitch deck has to stand on its own feet. But of course, you may have many interesting investors, and at that point, it is very important to share a rapport. That are they how supportive will they be? How much do they understand? It's a very fair question to turn it around to a VC and ask them to not pitch you, but I think ask them for their hypothesis or thesis on the space and your company as well. And to get whether you're thinking, of course, they have slightly different objectives. I mean, in a sense, they're a financial investor. They need to make returns, And I mean, well, we also want to make money longer term, but we also like doing this work, right? So slightly different in different approach, but of course you want to see whether they share the same passion in the company as well, and so on. Align there, right? Definitely. But I think that will come as part of the. You won't know it before you meet them, right? You probably meet them 2, 3, 4 times for them to get excited about this, for them to realize why they. Definitely VCs also need to like you. I mean, they will use that sometimes, right? Because for them it's equally important, because you have to go through pretty much thick and thin, right? And that requires you to have a fundamental understanding of each other, and it is an important critical part over time. Yes.
Nice. Thanks.
Yep, great, thank you. And I see we're running towards the end of our time. So just one final question for both of you. What does the future hold? What are your expansion plans? Harshit, Indonesia is a massive market. Are you going to confine yourself to that, or are you looking
Yeah, I mean,
elsewhere? Because your product looks to be fantastic.
thank you. No, I mean, we're in Vietnam and Malaysia now. So, I mean, we have 2 new markets, and I mean, expansion is tempting. But to be honest, like the one thing I would advise is that I think you got to be very careful with expansion. It's very easy and tempting to think about, but very difficult to actually execute, and it causes a lot of pain in the organization in terms of the amount. And you always underestimate how tough expansion is going to be. So I think focusing is probably a little bit more important, and that's what I think. I think COVID may have played a little hand in our expansion as well, in terms of the timing of it. But I think as exciting and fun as it is, I would definitely really. I mean, this is one of the areas where it's better to overthink a little bit than take a very quick decision. Yeah. But I think for us right now, 3 markets, I think we've got our hands full with that.
Good. Hands well and truly full. Yeah.
Nice.
Jeremiah, how about you? I mean, you're in Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan.
What is the future?
Any future?
Wow. What does the future hold for us? That is such a loaded question. I'm so stressed right now, Hugh. I would say that in terms of the media, in media space and even content creation, it's definitely a very, very good space to be in, because every single platform right now pushes the agenda of content creation being the medium for any kind of dissemination of information, Looking at media consumption patterns, right? Everybody is on their smartphone. That is the new TV. And subscription models are actually getting more prevalent and also more familiar with everyone, as opposed to in the past. So honestly, I think that I'm in a good space. Media is definitely picking up. Videos, content as a whole will never die out, But I mean, if I'm talking as a whole, like InsurTech, like Koala, I think they are in a very good space as well, man, because right now everything is going digital. So if I can also pivot and combine videos with tech to form like vid tech, wow, then you know what, I'll be like match made in heaven, and I'll probably be like, okay guys, the future is pretty awesome, but who's to say? Sarah, right? What will be. So for now, I think everything is, yeah. Sorry, I can't answer your question, Hugh. That was just a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo. But I think okay.
No, that's fine.
If I were to give like a one definitive answer, right, I would say that the future is digital. Yeah, so we're in a good space right now.
Yep. And just one final very quick question. How did you both come up with your company names?
Yeah, I mean, for us, look, people love, I mean, it's not unfair to say, I think that generally speaking, people don't have a love-hate. I mean, between the love-hate kind of thing, it's mostly hate relationship with insurance companies, right? So when we were building it, we were like, if you want to be different, it has to be something where, could we ever turn into a dining table conversation? Could your kid come up to you and say like, hey, what is koala? Like, I'm sure your kid will come up to you and ask you like, what is Gojek or something? Because, they've bought chocolate on it, and they're like, now they're like, this is how I can get chocolates, right? So like, how can we ever turn to that? Do people ask you about what is I don't know, I don't name insurers, but I mean, do they ask you about that? I doubt it, right? And so we thought that we needed to have a different branding where, in a way, it was so ridiculous that, it would be like question, right? And it was partly formed to make you ask that question, right? I mean, so that this is a very common question we get, right? And it was done to draw attention and so that it's very different from the industry.
Well, it certainly worked.
Yeah.
Jeremiah, how about you?
Well, when Hashi was actually explaining, when he said a love-hate relationship, I thought he was going to say koalas. And I was like, who would ever hate a koala, man? Those lovely eucalyptus-eating animals. But I mean, that's actually a very good point that he brought up, InsurTech. Everybody, it's kind of like taboo. But I believe in insurance like wholeheartedly, man. You never know what's going to happen. But okay, so for CVP Group, CVP actually stands for Cinema Verite Pictures. And Cinema Verite is a French term, a style of filming to talk about the audience viewing your video through the eyes of the director. So I'm so basic, oh my gosh, I'm like, I might as well just call myself documentary productions or documentary pictures, But back then, because, I was young and I was thinking like, oh, I want to be this creative dude creating like Cinema Verite Pictures. And I was like, wow, that was my eureka moment. But then as my brand grew, people never knew how to pronounce my company name. It became like Cinema Veritas, Cinema Verite, Cinema Verity, and I was just like, okay, let's just call ourselves CVP. Camera, video, pictures, or camera, video, photos, so that people will be like, oh, that company that did content. Okay. So yeah, that's the evolution of my brand name. Hope it's hope
Well, thank you both for
visual storytelling.
sharing that. Good to know there are stories behind the names. Yeah, but I'd like to thank you both. We're just at the end of our time now, so thank you both for for your time and your very valuable insights this afternoon. I hope the participants in the webinar have enjoyed it. Stay tuned on the Acclaim LinkedIn page to see when our next webinar is. We have these about once a month on different subjects. So hope you found it informative and look forward to seeing you next time. So thank you, everyone. And thanks, Jeremiah, and thanks, Harshit. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Jeremiah. Take care.
Hey, no worries. If anybody wants to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Jeremiah Su. If anybody wants to find Harshit, you can find him on LinkedIn. Okay. If anybody wants to find Hugh, you can find him on LinkedIn as well.
You absolutely can.
Yeah. Harshit, you should do like one quick product plug, man, for people who want to, onboard onto your platform.
I would love to, but I think I'll let the product speak for itself, right?
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much, guys.
Okay,
right, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.